Hello everybody, this is the Empirical Audiophile and welcome to my channel. What I'm going to be talking about on my channel is older equipment, used equipment. I'm going to be trying to guide you in not only your first stereo system, but maybe your last stereo system. I do understand, after being in this particular hobby for over 50 years, that many people just don't have the wherewithals to buy very new, expensive equipment. It just is way out of hand with some of this new equipment, especially speakers. Speakers have gotten way out of hand. And basically for a speaker, you're paying a lot of your money for cabinetry. The cabinetry, I do have to admit, is beautiful. It's well made. It's very stiff, and you're paying a lot for the work it takes for cabinetry because of the finishes that they're giving you. But, you know, you can buy a pair like these Altec Valencias here. Yes, they're 45 years old, but it doesn't have a fancy cabinet. They have beautiful mahogany woodwork, and there's nothing wrong with them. If you can find a good pair, you probably pay about $1,200 to $2,000. This pair right here has been redone completely by me, and I am a aerospace mechanical engineer, and it didn't take an aerospace mechanical engineer to figure out how to make these sound even better than what the manufacturer did. And I can explain to you how I did it. I will explain to you exactly what you have to do if you buy a pair of these to really make them sound great. You'll take a good speaker and you'll make it sound great, and it will beat anything that's out there that is newer. And that's what I think audiophiles want. They can't afford brand new speakers. Or I just heard a guy complaining about, let's say, clips. I'll put the link below of his video. He's complaining about the clip speakers, the corner horns. They're not cheap. They are not cheap speakers. And he's complaining about the stamped out baskets on the 15-inch woofers. He's talking about the fit and finish, how it's bad, screws are loose. He said, for this price, you should be getting a lot better quality speakers. And I'll give you the link below, and you'll be able to click on it and you can listen to him. He's just telling it the way it is. And unfortunately for myself, being an engineer, when I look at stuff, I think to myself, you know, this could have been made better. Just with a little engineering, it would have maybe cost you a little bit more to manufacture it. But in the long run, you would have made a better product for the people. And I will be doing reviews on the Marantz turntable, on the Macintosh phono preamp. I will do a review on the Project tube preamp, phono preamp, which is pretty good. It's noisy though. I even swapped out the tubes, and it still made a noise where you can hear it on horns. I'm going to be talking about horn speakers. There's a lot of good horn speakers out there. There's your older clips. You can get clip speakers if you want. You can get JBL speakers. You can get the Altec speakers. There's nothing wrong with them. And try to save yourself a little bit of money. But if you are going to buy used equipment, there's a lot out there. I do understand. There's a plethora of used equipment out there. But me, if I were going to buy used equipment, I would buy the high-end used equipment. That's right, the high-end equipment that's hitting that 20-25 year mark. And I'll tell you why. Because it was made so well, the high-end equipment. Today's equipment that is being sold cannot beat it in sound quality. Because in 25 years, as being an audiophile, I can't really say I hear today's equipment and say it is far better than the equipment that was made 25 years ago. I can't really say that. It just isn't made better, because manufacturers have to cut corners in order to make an amp cheap enough so you will buy it. Unless it goes in the high end, then you know you're going to be paying $5, $6, $7, $8,000 or more, $15,000 for mono blocks, $17,000. It's not in the realm of everybody's pocketbook to do that. But if you go like, let's say for the Conrad Johnson you're looking at, you can pick this up for a good price and it will blow away the new stuff. It is not cheap equipment. It is very heavy equipment, very well made equipment. It was their top of the line equipment. Conrad Johnson is still in business. And that's another thing. There's a few manufacturers like Conrad Johnson that have been around for 40 plus years, and they will fix anything they have made for you. If you have a bit of problem with it, you send it back to the manufacturer. They'll re-go over the whole thing for you. They'll bring it back up to specs or better than the original specs. And you'll get your equipment back and you're good to go for 20, 30 years. I mean, Conrad Johnson is one of them. Mark Levinston is another one. They fix everything that they've ever made. Macintosh will fix anything they have made, they will fix. In fact, Macintosh even makes a claim that people are sending in 30-year-old amps and all they need done to it is have the light bulbs change. Audio Research, their equipment. Steve Guttenberg just did a little review on an Audio Research preamp that was completely redone by Audio Research. He said it looked brand new and it sounded great and it was brought up to specs, better than the original specs when it was new. And you got Jeff Rowland Design Group. You buy a piece of Jeff Rowland, you can send it right on back, no matter what the age is, and they'll fix it. There's also another company that I know of, and I'm just giving you companies I know for a fact that work on their equipment, but it's not quite as old. It's been around since 1988, Manley Labs. Manley will fix all their equipment. You send it back to Manley, they'll fix it. It's a tube equipment, they'll fix it. I don't see too much Manley out there equipment for sale, really, but that's a piece that you may want if you're going to have horn. And another thing with horn speakers seem to really like tube equipment, like the Conrad Johnson you're looking at here. The amp is all tube, the preamp is tube, the DA converter is a tube DA converter, believe it or not. And Conrad Johnson did special things with all their top-of-the-line tube equipment, and all their equipment, in fact. One thing, they put filters in. So when your AC line came in, it was filtered. They put a filter in there to filter out the AC. Another thing Conrad Johnson does with their expensive equipment, like this Premier 10 and the Premier 9 that you see, they would float the chassis that has the tubes on it. Literally, it floats. And it's not bolted down to the chassis. It floats in the chassis. It's like on springs. And that's supposed to help stop microphonics. So they went through this extra step to make sure that things were isolated. The power supply inside the Conrad Johnson that you're looking at has a coppered shield going around the power supply. And this is a 25-year-old preamp. And it will still sound better than preamps that are made today, even in the $17,000, $15,000 range. That preamp will sound better than a $15,000 to $17,000 preamp today, because they haven't really gone by leaps and bounds making equipment sound so much better than it did 25, 20 years ago. It's just not there. So if you're looking to save money and you want an ultimate stereo system you can live with the rest of your life, the best thing to do is look for used equipment than buying the new stuff. Unless you have plenty of money and you can buy the new stuff, then buy it. But always buy from a reputable maker, because I've seen this in the 50 years I've been in this hobby. Audio Alchemy, they came out, they made cheap equipment. It was nice equipment. Everybody bragged about how nice it was, and within a few years they went out of business. You're always getting the newest and greatest piece of equipment out there. It'll be a CD player, it may be a preamp, it hardly cost any money, and everybody's bragging about, oh, how great it is, and it only costs $1,000. I would put my $1,000 into that Conrad Johnson Premier 10 any day of the week before I would buy any preamp that costs $1,000 today, and put my money into that. A brand that may not even be around 20 years from now. Or you're going to be thinking to yourself that it was the latest and greatest for how long? I've seen this happen with CD players from Radio Shack. You buy this CD player and it's supposed to be the latest and greatest, and you know what? It comes and goes. It's here one day and it's gone the next. Audiophiles lose interest in it because it wasn't as great as everybody said it is. Always trust your ears also. Don't trust when you go to a salon to buy your equipment. Don't trust what they are telling you you're supposed to hear. That is number one big mistake. I will go into that in more detail. But a lot of these salons, you go to them and they're going to tell you what you should be hearing, and can't you hear it? And since this is a male dominant hobby, a lot of men don't like to think that, well, I can't hear it, and the guy who's telling me about it, he hears it, and maybe it is good. Don't fall for that. Listen yourself, or bring a friend that you can trust, or if you belong to your audiophile club, bring club members, let them all listen to it. And I'm going to explain to you how, belonging to the Chicago Audio Society, how sometimes we would all get together and we would play something that somebody wants to buy and really see if it was doing what the manufacturer claimed. Because a lot of manufacturers make big claims. I'll give an example. Carver had an amp, a 1.5T, I think it was, amp. I had that amp. He claimed it was just as good as the Mark Levinston. That's like, I think the amp cost $750 back then, the 1.5T, and he made this claim. So Stereophile finally said, okay, come in, we'll get a Mark Levinston, you bring your amp in, and they proved that Carver wasn't telling the truth. And they got mad at Carver over it because he kept trying to change cables, he kept doing this, he kept doing things to make his amp sound as good as the Mark Levinston. And I remember finally they got mad at him and said, get out of here, we don't need your advertisement, we don't need nothing from you. Really, they got that mad at Carver because, no, your amp does not sound as good as a Mark Levinston. If you buy a 25-year-old Mark Levinston, beautifully made amplifiers or anything, people don't put those up for sale. And you got to think to yourself, why don't they put these things up for sale? It's because they sound so good. They were so well made. And why buy something new when the old equipment sounds just as good? And you're going to pay a lot less price. You're going to save a lot of money if you do that. And that's the same way with the speakers that you're looking at. The Altec, Voice of the Theaters. You can buy these things for $1,200, $2,000. If they're in excellent condition, you're not going to find too many of them that are in mint condition, because the foam that went on the front of the speakers, of course, got old, dry rotted, and start rotting away. So if you try to clean them, they would just flake out. And so a lot of people had to replace the fronts. Like the ones you're looking at here, the Valencias, I had to replace the fronts, and I had to replace a lot of the foam that was in it because it just got dry rotted. It just was old. But that doesn't have anything to do with sound quality, because most of those speaker covers, they were cosmetic. They really weren't made for, to keep them on and play music through them. Basically, today we removed the speaker covers, and as you can see, the Altec that you're looking at, it has a little tab on top. That's so you can grab the tab and pull the cover off. Very simple and very easy. Of course, these particular Altecs, as you can see by the photo here, because I'm an engineer, I redid the baffles. And actually, I patent the baffles that you're looking at here on this particular Altec. And I strengthen up the whole Altec. And I'll be getting more into how you can take a pair of these Altecs and modify them just the way I did. Now, these Altecs, they're not light speakers. They weigh about 250 pounds a piece. Yeah, you heard that. 250 pounds a piece for one of these Altecs. That's not both of them. I just had some movers move these Altecs to my new home, and this was one of the pieces of furniture they really bitched about. They said, holy cow, these things are extremely heavy. But though that weight, normally I think they weigh about 110, 115 pounds without the modifications. With the modifications, they're about 250 pounds. And I will get into explaining to you how you can modify a pair of Altecs like this to sound real. And when I say sound real, they absolutely sound real with a lot of recordings that are out there. And they're just a wonderful speaker if you can find a pair. And that would explain why Art Dudley and some of them had them in their main systems. And I mean, these guys, they review all kinds of beautiful equipment, yet in their main system, they would have an old pair of Altecs, because these speakers are 102 efficient. The bass speaker alone is anywhere between 98 to 104 dB efficient. If someone knows what the real number is, I'd like to know that information, and where did you get your information from? Because I know they do make new speakers that are the 15-inch woofers, and they're about 98 dB efficient. But these, I heard they're more in the hundreds for this particular woofer. It's a paper cone woofer. It is extremely heavy. It is very well made. It's not a stamped out shroud basket on the back. It is a farm basket. I think it's aluminum. It has 4 very, very strong legs. I mean, when you look at the speaker alone, you can tell this was very well made 45 years ago. In fact, the only speakers you can see that are made this good are basically your subwoofers, you know, where they make them heavy duty to take the bass. And another thing is, when you play these speakers, they barely take any power. That's why the Premier 11A is great. You got 70 watts of power, but you have no lack of bass. You have no lack of authority. And I will get into that with reviews on recordings, but I will say this right now. If you have a pair of these, they sound so good that they sound like you're right in a Chicago nightclub. And I've had people who are professional musicians even tell me that. He says, this system sounds like you're in a nightclub, period. If you're the kind of audiophile that's looking for a system that sounds real, has dynamics, and sounds, a saxophone sounds like a saxophone, clarinet sound like a clarinet, piano's going to sound just like a piano. This is what you need. You need to get the high-end equipment, you need to get the high-end cable, and you need to get some great speakers that will reproduce the sound just like if you're sitting in a nightclub and you're being entertained in a nightclub. Because I'll tell you, these have it. These have no problem with dynamics at all. None whatsoever. And it's hard for me to sit here and tell you that you can buy a brand new speaker today that's going to sound better. Because we actually, at the Chicago Audio Society, did a little comparison with these Altecs and compared them to $50,000 speakers, which I will do a review on, and everyone liked the Altecs better. So what is that telling you? Just because a speaker has a high price doesn't mean it's going to sound better than some of the old equipment, like the old JBLs or anything else that's out there. It doesn't necessarily mean that. So until next time, hope you tune in then, and I'll explain to you each piece of equipment and I'll probably have to have a long video just to explain how to take a pair of these Altecs. That horn alone on these Altecs, it's 18 inches wide by 7 inches high. It's far bigger than any of the Klipsch horns. So it's a little more dynamic than Klipsch speakers are. I mean, the Klipsch speakers don't compare to these big Altecs. And because of the way the bass driver has been redesigned by me, that bass driver is like having a 21-inch bass driver now. Not a 15, but a 21-inch. It's almost like now it's become horn loaded, but it is very tight, and I will explain to you how to achieve that. I mean, this bass driver, you wouldn't think it's a 15-inch bass driver because it is as tight as any small bass driver you would have out there. A little 6-inch, 10-inch. No, this is just as tight. But the only thing of it, it's very dynamic and very powerful. So until next time, thank you for tuning in.